Right, so good morning. Right, so as you may have heard, I'm a physicist, okay? I'm not going to give a physics talk, don't worry. There will not be a test at the end. But I'm going to talk about an idea that kind of comes from physics. And I'm going to talk about how to apply it more widely. So for me, this is quite fun to do because normally when I give a physics talk, I kind of have to be really precise. I'll give facts and figures and all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to do that. So physicists who are watching out there, I apologise, okay? But I think it's an important thing that we can use to talk about what's happening more in the real world. And that's about how complexity can create perfect storms, okay? And I wanted to start, we got any Kubrick fans here? Yeah. Doctor Strange. For those who haven't seen this film, no spoilers, okay? But these are a few shots from the film. And on the top left there, you can see it's Colonel Mandrake. He's on his exchange year to the US, okay? With the RAF, he's at USA Air Force Base. And it didn't go very well, okay? He's at the point of receiving the phone call from the base commander who has just sent the fleet or whatever of nuclear bombers to attack Russia, which he should not do. And he's going, oh hell, you know, like this very British. And you can see he's surrounded by computers. And when they try and meet to try and figure out what to do about it, that's on the bottom right there. There's a big war room full of people, lots of people needed to try and figure out what to do. Because it's a really complicated system. And the problem is, those of you who've seen the film, it's just one thing goes wrong after the other, okay? They've got all these fail-safes and fail-safes and fail-safes and fail-safes, so that you could not go to war by accident. And yet it all goes horribly wrong. And this is a classic kind of system that I'm talking about. How does this happen, okay? Now, people started to think about this, first of all, when they started to build big nuclear plants, big chemical plants. And the sort of a really good book, there's a bunch of books on it now, it's Perrow's work, 1984, okay? So the timing is when people started to have these big plants and having big, complicated shipping, transport, aviation, these kinds of things. And he did some studies of these things, and it's worth just reading what he said. He said, I'll dwell upon the characteristics of high-risk technologies that suggest that no matter how effective conventional safety devices are, there is a form of accident that is inevitable. In other words, he's saying no matter how many fail-safes you put in, you study your system, you're trying to be as careful as possible, you see a possible problem, you put a fail-safe in to guard against it. No matter how much of that you do, accidents are inevitable in these systems. And that's a complex system problem that I want to think about because it has some big implications for how we're living now, okay? Is it inevitable, or can we somehow fix it, and why is it inevitable if it is? Okay. And what he identified the problem was, he called it close coupling, that one thing led to another. And he kind of said, well, if we could not close couple, maybe we could fix this problem. But it's having lots of systems coupled together, okay? And the sort of things that were happening, you may have heard of these things, terrible accidents like Bhopal, it was a chemical leak in a chemical plant, 500,000 people exposed, several thousand killed, people still arguing about how many thousand people were killed because of this accident. Horrible combination of not enough safety, things not being done properly, complicated system. 3 Mile Island, there's been several nuclear accidents. This one is so famous, it's got its kind of, plaque there, it's historical plaque. And the plaque says, events here would cause basic changes throughout one of the world's nuclear power industry. In other words, we've learnt the lesson from this and it's all okay now. Okay? But these things kind of kept happening. And then you'd have a big kind of inquiry or whatever to figure out when it went wrong, and you'd find something and you'd try and fix it. Okay. The other thing that he's had an impact on is how we think about these things. Because people just decided, I'm not going to live next to that. Not in my backyard, okay? And if only I could live in a nice kind of cottage in the country, if only I could remove myself from this kind of system, be far enough away from it, then it'll all be okay for me. And of course, that would be great if there weren't so many of us on the planet. But my thesis is, well, there are so many of us now, you can't live in this way. You can't get far enough away. You can't get rid of the power plant, you need it. So we have to live with it, and so we've got to solve this problem. But it kind of drives the way we think about these things. I think we have to certainly move beyond, not in my backyard, because, as I'm going to argue, we're in the backyard now, all of us. Okay. So, I want to kind of fast forward now. 1980s, the power plant was somewhere over there and we were living over here. Now I would say we're in the power plant. And one of the incidents of this was this horse meat scandal. Some of you may remember this in Europe. So all of a sudden, across Europe, everything had horse in it. So there's beef lasagnas and sausages and burgers and things being sold all over Europe. They tested them. There's horse everywhere. And where did the horse come from? And you can see that there's a big group of people there, EU ministers, trying to figure out what to do about the horse. Just like with, Dr. Strangelove, it takes a lot of people to try and figure out what to do. So how did the horse get in? And it's complicated. There was plenty of paperwork to track the meat, where the meat came from, and it was taken from here, and it was taken there, and it was chopped up and mixed with some other meat. They did all this safety and all the paperwork, and yet the meat still got in, the horse. So adding complexity didn't solve the problem. And now it becomes a kind of global embedded problem. Last summer, BA, okay, we had an IT failure. It's not just a little IT failure anymore, it's people heaping up in airports all over the world for days, okay, because the system is driven so far to its full capacity. I mean, I've got a bit stuck in one of these things. There was 3 inches of snow in Heathrow. I was in San Francisco, it was right before Christmas. It took me 3 days to get home, because once you cancel a few flights, they're all full, it's Christmas. The people are heaping up everywhere, dreadful. Cascading kind of problems. A small problem, it cascades and causes a global catastrophe. And I'm sure lots of people watching this will have experienced something like this. When, something happened and here I am and it's taking 3 days, why? What was the problem? And one of the problems, you can see here people say, well, was it cost cutting? If only we spent enough money, if we're not cheapskates, then it should be all right. Were they cheapskates about it? Okay? And the issue there is that what you need to do is allow a kind of margin for error. So it's the philosophy, things will go wrong. So I'll allow a bit of margin for a bit of slack. Don't fill the planes to capacity. Then if one is cancelled, you've got room to put people on the other planes. But that costs money. Okay? So to do that, we touch upon this famous thing, the illusion of control. It means I can work out what the margin of error needs to be. I know everything about the system, okay? And that means I know exactly how much money I need to spend to avoid this kind of incident. And it may be that I decide I don't want to pay the money. So I've had a flight cancelled from Heathrow to Stockholm because of this much snow in Heathrow. Stockholm's open, they've got this much snow. They pay for the snow clearing because they get a lot of snow. Heathrow, they hardly get any snow, they're not going to pay for the snow clearing. So if it snows, tough. Okay, so it's a decision about how much money you're going to spend for how much chaos you're going to get. And that's kind of okay if you know how much chaos you're going to get. And that's the problem. What if the chaos comes out to be a bit more than that? Okay, because suddenly it cascades around the world. Okay, so the point about this is you need to know to calculate what the risk is. And we don't know how to do this in these complicated systems. And Exhibit A is that the stock markets, and I'm not just showing a S&P 500 difference trace there. They go all over the place. If you're just tossing a coin, if I want to work out the likelihood of something by tossing a coin, okay, it's heads or tails, and I do it 10 times, it could be 9 times, it could be 11 times, but the difference isn't that much, and I can figure out what it is. But these complex systems don't behave like that. You get wild extremes of behaviour, and it's hard to work out what they're going to do. In fact, it's an open problem as to what they're going to do. So you don't really know what the margin of error is in these complex systems. And that's a problem. Okay. And it's part of what they are. Okay. Oh, well, there's another side to this. Of course, say you can figure it all out and make it all safe. And a nice example is we like to go skiing. Skiing's a bit dangerous. You get avalanches in the mountains, okay? So a lot of effort is being made to deal with the avalanches. A lot of studying of avalanches, making avalanches happen, small ones, while nobody's on the slopes, predicting when it's safe, all kinds of stuff being done. And as a consequence, more people go skiing, and of course that means more people die. So you make it safer, and more people get killed. Because the safer you make it, the more people will do it, because they feel it's safer, and so they can take more risks. And we are naturally like this. So even if we're all trying to be safe and everything's taken care of, when your car has got extra airbags and you feel really comfortable, you just go a bit faster. And we all kind of do this. And this is part of the problem. Okay. And finally, it's about how we make decisions. Some of you may have heard of the terrible, this is the first of the shuttle accidents. Okay, and so this is a combination of how it was decided to build the shuttle. And you can see the little red arrow, there's a funny bit of gas streaming out where it should not be streaming out. There's a big fuel tank, okay? And what has happened, this thing was built in segments, so they have to join the segments up, and they join them up with a big kind of rubber rings, they're called O-rings, okay? And of course, then O-rings are made of rubber. If it gets too cold, they become fragile. And so they knew they couldn't launch it below a certain temperature. And then one day they decided they'd do that for whatever reasons, it's a long story, okay? And they killed everybody. Why was it made in the sections? Because you want the freedom to build it wherever you want, because then you can put money in different parts of the US, which is part of what you want to do, okay? So you sacrificed resilience for other expediencies. And that is kind of my take home. We need to put a price of resilience. If you built the thing in one lump, it wouldn't be a problem with the O-rings. You wouldn't be stuck with the decision of, shall I launch or shan't I launch? Is it too cold? Do I balance an engineer's decision with a political decision? The decision goes away. So we have to price resilience in. And that's, if we put a value on it, as we put a value on cost cutting, can we get the most out of our systems? Can we make the airline seats a bit smaller, get a few more people in? Can we make the system more resilient? It has a cost value. And that's kind of the way we could deal with these complex systems. And then maybe these accidents would not be inevitable. Okay, thank you. And that's all you can find.